Welcome to Love and Abuse, the show about navigating the difficult relationship. From simple disagreements to emotionally abusive behaviors, you deserve respect and kindness. All the information on this show is meant for educational purposes only. Always seek a professional for your mental health and well-being, and always pick your battles wisely. I'm your host, Paul Coliani. Welcome to another episode of Love and Abuse. I'm recording this right before the new year. Boy, this might be a trigger for some people, just being in the end of December and in the new year. Like, what's the new year going to bring? What do I have to deal with now? You know, the new year is supposed to bring more happiness and more harmony and success and prosperity. I mean, it's not supposed to do that, but that's what we want it to do. We want it to bring happiness and prosperity and success and all those things, especially in our relationships. That would be nice. Somebody could just tell us the secret formula for a great relationship, and that's what I try to do. Every time I create an episode of Love and Abuse or The Overwhelmed Brain over at my other podcast, theoverwhelmedbrain.com, and I get messages that are just the opposite of what most people want to bring into the new year. This one message that I'm looking at now, I've summarized, so I'm just going to read you a couple things here. He drinks, he criticizes her appearance, her posture, and he makes jokes, and he demands more affection. He gets angry when she doesn't do the right things, and he uses manipulation tactics, like using a friend's death to pressure reconciliation. He says he's taken the Healed Being program, my program to help abusive people change and heal, and all these things that I've probably talked about on the air before, and I've probably talked about in the newsletter. You can go to loveandabuse.com if you want to get on the newsletter. And more and more, lying about hacking her phone and refusing to discuss past abuse, saying it's demoralizing to him and that he's not that person anymore. And all this stuff that one person in their life has to deal with, who many people listening right now relate to at a visceral level, I'm sure. Oh yeah, I'm dealing with that, except it's a lot worse. Or I'm dealing with very similar things. Or I'm dealing with this abusive person who makes me feel bad all the time, but it's hard to spot and hard to pinpoint exactly what they're doing to make me feel that way, but I certainly feel that way when it happens. I read one person's, this might be this message. I think in this message, the person wrote that his monologues are just like, they're just endless. I've known people that monologue, and they monologue meaning they keep talking and talking and talking, controlling the conversation with zero interaction. If you want to know the sign of an abusive person, it's when, this is one sign, it's when you have to sit there as a captured audience to someone who won't stop talking at you, pointing things out that you need to understand and agree with. And you have to agree or at least understand everything that puts them in the best light, and it's all your fault. Every problem in the relationship is your fault. And this is why, A, B, C, and they just do the monologue. I had one person that I used to work with when I did one-on-one sessions. She sent me a recording of her husband doing the monologue. It was non-stop. He would talk and talk and talk at her. And he just threw in so much information that she didn't know where to go with any of it. It would be like I told you all the details of how a computer was built. I don't know every single detail, but I could tell you a lot. And if you didn't know much about technology, you might get lost in my words. You might tell me, whoa, I can't understand everything you're saying. What's a CPU? What does GPU stand for? What is DDR? I don't understand all this stuff. You need to slow down and explain each and everything to me so I can follow along. But the manipulative, emotionally abusive person doesn't want you to get it. They want you to listen. They want you to keep listening until you are so worn down that you have no choice but to give in. They know this works. They know it. The person who monologues knows that they will wear you down, tire you out, and until you get to the point where you just give up and give in. So you get to that point where you go, fine, 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 whatever you said, that's fine. And then you give in and let it go. But you hold on to it inside, but you let it go externally. You might say, you win, that's fine. Let's just move on. Because you don't want to deal with their monologue. You don't want to have to counter every point that they make. You don't have to defend yourself with every single thing that they said. My wife was in a relationship with an abusive person, and their arguments were legendary. I don't know for sure. I wasn't there, but I've seen them argue long after they've been divorced because I was with her, and they had an argument outside his house. And it was one day when I was traveling with my wife and her son, and they started arguing about something, and it was completely ridiculous watching them go back and forth because he wanted to make a point and she was countering every single one of his points. I thought, my God, when they were married, this must have been how it was all the time. Because my wife doesn't really back down. She might have in the marriage, I don't know. But my wife doesn't back down from anything. If somebody makes a point, she makes a point to address that point if she disagrees with it. And he made a bunch of, I think, stupid points, maybe wrong points. And she wouldn't let it go. She wouldn't let him back down. She wouldn't let him keep those points that didn't make sense or were completely wrong. And that just went on for a long time. And we finally drove away, and it never happened again. And I'm not putting him down for that or putting her down for that. It just happened. I just noticed that my wife isn't like that. At least she's not like that anymore. She might have been that way in the marriage a little bit, where she just gave in and said fine and just moved on. But I think as the marriage continued in the years, she wasn't going to accept any more of his bad behaviors. And so it got worse. It was bad enough, but it got worse, at least as far as the communication. So the monologue is designed to keep you powerless, to keep you feeling like you can say nothing, you can do nothing, and you have to wait for them to stop talking or give in, give up, so that you can move on. Because if you don't give in and give up, they might continue to talk. And if they continue to talk, what are you going to do? You have to sit there and take it. Or you can do what my wife did the last time I saw them argue, which is many years ago, but thankfully, you can just keep countering and defending and explaining. And when you do that with somebody, the type of person I'm talking about, when you do that, you will likely find that you do not have the energy to keep up with them, because their whole purpose, the monologuer, is to keep you listening, wear you down, keep you powerless, and get their way. And someone who wants to get their way that badly is usually unstoppable. They have the energy to continue, and they are usually smart. They know how to craft words and explain things in a way that are hard to counter, mainly because they know how to word things in a way that make you think about what you might have done wrong, because you are more likely to reflect on what you did in your past or what you said in your past, even if it's 5 minutes ago. You are more likely to reflect on what happened, and they are more likely to try to push through what happened by continuing to make you listen to them. So if you're stuck with a monologuer, if you live with somebody who likes to do the monologue and make you listen, there's usually no way out of it unless you become a monologuer. That's not the solution. I'm not giving you a magic pill here. I'm saying that one who likes to control the conversation will not allow somebody else to control the conversation unless you control the conversation. Meaning, let me tell you something. No, you listen. No, this is what we're going to do right now. You listen to me. And then you have to be prepared to do the monologue yourself, which is basically lowering yourself to their standard. Or maybe you are prepared to do that, which is fine. I actually have no problem with that if you become the monologuer, because most likely you're going to say a lot of things that are correct and true, because the victim of emotional abuse who has to do the monologue usually gets to that point where they've had enough. I've had enough of your BS. This is what really happened. And by you telling me it didn't happen, you are trying to get me to feel guilty. You are trying to make me feel responsible. But it's hard to do that when you're so emotionally involved and emotionally reactive to the person doing the monologue, that it's hard to get your wits about you when you're still trying to figure out exactly what's going on, because they threw all this stuff at you like a machine gun. Like they are riddling you with emotional bullets that cause you to think about everything they're saying. It's really something they do in hypnosis. A long time ago, I got certified in hypnosis. I know how to do it. Haven't done it in a long time, but I know all the processes and I know all the psychology behind it. And one of the processes or the techniques in hypnosis is called the confusion technique. And monologuers are really good at putting you in a trance-like state of confusion. When you're in the confusion state, you are more suggestible. You are more likely going to do what they want you to do. It would be like if I came up to you and I went to shake your hand. This is actually another technique. And you reached out to shake my hand, but instead of shaking your hand, I grabbed your hand with my other hand. And you would be thrown off for a moment. That would be a pattern interrupt that put you in some cognitive dissonance that caused you to be kind of in the void for a moment. Like, what just happened? What's going on here? You grab my hand with your other hand. Why aren't we shaking hands? You won't even have those thoughts. You just kind of be blank. And during that blank moment, you're in a state of confusion and you are more suggestible to what a nefarious person wants you to do, if you're with somebody who is nefarious and wants to manipulate you in some way. And you just have to be aware that these little pattern interrupts, these little confusion techniques, people who do them, at least if they haven't trained for them, usually learned it on their own over the years. They've learned what works, and they've learned that, for example, controlling a conversation by doing the monologue works because the person sits there draining, their energy is draining, and they are becoming like so lost in all the words that are coming their way, and everything that they want to explain or defend, but don't have a chance to, it just gets lost. There's just so much going on. And the manipulative person knows if they take a breath and stop, that they could lose their traction and lose their progress with you, unless they stopped real early in the process. But there's a breaking point for you. And the breaking point, well, actually, there's two breaking points, maybe more, but there's two breaking points that come to my mind when somebody is monologuing you and talking at you. The two breaking points are, one, you are so confused or so worn down that you just give in. So that is you giving up, because there's nothing you can say or do to stop them, and there's nothing you could say or do to explain to them or defend yourself, because their goal, their entire goal, is to keep you worn down. So that's the first breaking point, where you are worn down, or you get worn down, and then you just give in and say whatever you want, or you think that whatever that person wants, I don't care. I just want that talking to stop. The second breaking point is sort of where my wife got in her last marriage. And again, I don't know all the details here, but I'm assuming that she got to the point where it was, I've had enough. You got to shut up. So that breaking point is, I'm not going to listen to this anymore. Now you listen to me. It's rare that part happens, but more common near the end of the relationship, because the breaking point is building over the years. At least that type of breaking point where you've had enough. I've had enough. I'm not going to listen to anymore. And then you walk away. Or I've had enough. Now you listen to me. So there's like different branches you can take after you reach that kind of breaking point. And so the reason I brought this up is because of that message, where right at the end she said, I've listened to so many of his monologues that I don't know what healthy behavior looks like. What behaviors do I need to see to prove he's changed? Yeah, that's a great question. I've answered it in a few episodes. If you go to loveandabuse.com and you go to the podcast button, you'll see a little search field and you can just type in the word change or heal. And you're going to see a minimum of like 3 or 4 episodes, at least as of this recording, of how to tell if somebody who has been emotionally abusive is really changing. What are the true signs of it? So I'm not going to address that right now, what the true signs and behaviors are that show actual change instead of fake change. So definitely check that out if you're wondering how to tell if somebody's actually changing. But I do want to address the fact that she said, I've listened to so many of his monologues that I don't know what a healthy behavior looks like. When it comes to monologues is not healthy because if you and I are in a conversation, I say something and I may be adamant. Let's just say that I'm upset. I'm going to say something, I'm adamant about it, and this is what I feel and this is what I think. And then I'm going to wait for you to talk. I'm going to have a conversation with you. I'm going to interact with you. I'm going to wait to hear what you have to say. Either because I know I'm right and I want to hear you admit that you're wrong, or I know I'm right and you're going to say something that makes me realize, oh, maybe I'm not right. I'm going to give you a chance to speak because balancing communication is important in relationships. I'm going to balance the communication. This is not a one-sided conversation. We are not in a relationship where only one person has the floor always, and the other person walks away with their head down, not knowing what to do, and not feeling understood or listened to. So the monologue that doesn't end is like a parent talking down to a child for hours. That just doesn't make any sense. Even a parent talking down to a child for hours is not very healthy, because a parent steps in and says, hey, you put your hand in the cookie jar and I told you not to, therefore you don't get to play games tonight. That's it. There's the discipline. The parent takes a step toward discipline, does something to discipline the child, and it's over. But when an adult disciplines another adult, that's what it feels like. The monologue feels like discipline. You're going to listen to me, and you did this, and you did that, and I always take the blame, and and they're going to play the victim, of course. I'm the one who has to suffer the most. And when that happens, they don't want you to have a say. If you don't have a say, then you become their captured audience. And as long as you're in that space where you don't have a say and there's no interaction, then you're probably experiencing emotional abuse in that moment, because there's a feeling of being trapped, that captured audience feeling. If you feel trapped and you don't feel like you can speak up and you don't feel like you can say your side and have it heard, have it listened to, and even talk about your side, if that isn't there, then your role to them is shut up, listen to me, and give up, because you're going to lose and I'm going to win. That's it. That's your role. That's the role they want you to play. And if you are with somebody who wants you as a captured audience instead of an equal adult, it's very difficult for them to not do it. It's very difficult for them to interact with you and have a conversation with you when they want to get what they want. If they want something, if they don't want to be blamed, they don't want to take responsibility, they don't want to be accountable for their words or behaviors, then they are more likely to do this monologuing and keep you as a captured audience so that you finally give in and move on, which, we know what that does. It suppresses what you think because you can't express it. It represses your emotions, and suppression of thought, repression of emotion leads to depression. Maybe you didn't know that, but that's my formula for at least one way to get to depression. You can't say what you think, or you feel afraid to. You want to express an emotion, but you don't feel safe enough to do so. And when you stuff both of those things inside and they don't go anywhere, it will depress the mind and body. That's just what I've experienced myself a long time ago when I was depressed, and what I've seen in other people. When you don't feel safe enough to express yourself, or you are oppressed, So there's another pressing word. We have oppressed, repressed, suppressed, anything in that set of words that ends with press. When you feel oppressed to not be able to be who you are, and you suppress your thoughts, your words, and you repress your emotions, you're on your way to depression. It may not lead to depression, but it certainly leads to unhappiness, losing your zest, losing your passion for life, and eventually losing your self-worth, self-love, feeling like you're not good enough, you're not lovable, you're not important. All of this, it takes place inside of you. They don't even have to say that you're stupid or you're not lovable or you're not worthy. They don't have to say those words. It just happens inside of you because of the environment and the conditioning that you are experiencing, because you are getting this daily, sometimes multiple times a day, drip feeding of abusive behavior. And that is just one thing out of so many of the behaviors that an emotionally abusive person can do. The monologue, just talking at you. And so there's no real easy solution out of it, because when somebody wants what they want so badly that they keep you captured until you hear them out, one of the only ways that I know to get out of a conversation like that might be to reach that second threshold I talked about. That second threshold is, I've heard enough. I'm done with this conversation. I'm walking away from it. And I know what's going to happen in most relationships when that happens. They're either going to say, you're not walking away from me, I'm not done yet. And then they'll follow you around. Then you'll close the door and they'll be at the door. And then they'll talk at you through the door. And then they'll open the door and you have no privacy, no personal space. And they just won't give it up. So that's one thing that can happen. The other thing that can happen is they stonewall you. Well, fine. If that's what you want to do, fine. I just won't talk to you again forever. They'll do something like that. And a number of other things that they can do. But there's no easy way out of the monologue that makes peace. There's no balanced, healthy way out, except those two things, and possibly saying, I don't want to continue this conversation if you don't give me a moment to talk. There's a possibility. And all of these are just suggestions. People like this are very difficult to deal with. They have an agenda. They want to put you in the place they want you, and they want to keep you there so they can get their way without accountability, without responsibility, without obligation, without being named the bad guy or whatever. So they want to keep you in that space enough so that they get their way. So by saying, I won't have this conversation unless you give me a chance to interact, to respond, to talk to you. If you don't give me those small openings to have a conversation with you, then this isn't a conversation at all. A relationship is supposed to be two people talking back and forth, trying to come to sort of a common ground or an agreement on something. And if we can't agree, we can still talk about it. But you know what happens. You know what happens with somebody like this. You try to talk reason and they become unreasonable. You try to talk logic and they become illogical. Typically, this is what happens. And so there's no real good solution except understanding what's happening, understanding what's going on in the moment. Like, oh, they're doing the monologue now. This is where you can be like aware while they're trying to wear you down. Hey, this is happening in the moment. This is them talking and not giving me a chance. Instead of absorbing everything they're saying and trying to explain it in your mind and trying to think about what they're saying and coming up with a good answer for everything, instead of doing all of that in your head, my advice is just to say, oh, this is the monologue. This is what's happening. They're doing the monologue now. Let's see where this goes. I'm not saying you should stand for it. I prefer the other way out. Like, yeah, when you're ready to have a real conversation where you are open to hearing me too, where you are open to interacting, then let's do that. But for now, I'm not going to continue. I prefer that, but I also know that can cause more problems, because trying to walk away from somebody who wants your attention, they want to get what they want. So they will try to keep you there no matter what. and you've already dealt with so many other things in the relationship, and you know it's going to get worse in other ways. Totally. I get that. That's why awareness is key when something is happening to you, so that you don't get dragged down. And that is, I guess, my whole point for this episode. I don't want somebody to drag you down with the monologue, with that captured audience feeling like you have no choice, like you're in a timeshare presentation and you've already said no the first minute they started talking, but you have to listen to it for the next 2.5 to 4.5 hours, however long it is. That's how I've learned to listen to some people. Like, there's somebody I know that my wife and I have met a few times, and when he talks, he doesn't care what you have to say. He just likes to talk, and he's not curious about what you have to say. So when we're talking, if we're going back and forth with him, he doesn't ask follow-up questions. Like if I share, oh, I just had a car accident yesterday, instead of saying, oh my God, are you okay? What happened? He'll say, oh, you know, my son had a car accident last week. So there's like no empathy or no sympathy or something there, but he just doesn't seem to care about what anybody has to say but himself. And so I find it difficult to talk to him because it's just not interesting to talk to him. I'm sure he's a nice guy. I'm sure he does a lot of great things, but he's just not interesting to talk to because he doesn't have any interest in me or anybody that he talks to from what I've seen. So instead of being annoyed, and I'm working on this, instead of being annoyed, I become aware. I become aware of his pattern. And that's the only way. Like if I was really sucked into the conversation, I felt trapped, it would be difficult to notice what he's doing. Because we can get sucked into a conversation and soon we're thinking, oh, how do I get out of this conversation? And that's all we think about. And so instead of getting sucked into a true conversation, which we're not really having, and I'm just kind of stuck listening, I decided to become curious myself about his pattern. And this is when I started noticing that he never asks questions. He only shares, which is fine for him, but not fun for me. If I share like, hey, you know, I saw this great movie, and he says, I saw a great movie too, then he doesn't really care what I saw, then it's not really interesting to me, because if he doesn't care what I saw, then what am I doing there? And yes, this is analogous to romantic relationships as well. If you don't really care what I think, and you don't care how I feel, and you don't care if I'm happy or sad, if it doesn't matter to you, then what are we doing here? Why are we doing this? Why am I even having this conversation with you? Because it doesn't matter to you. You have an agenda, whether it's a bad agenda or a good agenda, or just they're totally oblivious to everyone else in the world but themselves, whatever it is. What am I doing here if you just want to hear yourself talk? Maybe you're a narcissist and you just want me to feed your ego. That could be it, but I want more. I want more out of a relationship. So when my wife and I are near this person and we have to talk to this person again, which will happen, I'm going to continue practicing this. It's a challenge. It's a challenge because do I politely laugh when he says something that feels funny to him and he laughs? Do I fake my smile? Do I say something? Believe me, I've considered this and I might actually do it. I'm still thinking about it. Do I say, hey, I noticed something that you do? Is calling him out a good idea? Should I tell him this? It depends on how much I can tolerate, I guess. And of course, I can just choose to ignore him and see what he does, turn away, look at somebody else. But that's difficult, right? I think most of the people who listen to this show have some compassion, have some empathy, and also care about treating people with kindness and respect, which I do. So it is hard to turn away when someone's talking and hope they get the message. That's another thing. He doesn't get the message. He just notices the back of my head, I guess. So I choose curiosity. Like, wow, this person is talking at me, talking sort of to me, but not with me. So what's that about? This doesn't resolve the monologue problem. If somebody has you as that captured audience and you can't get out of it, the reason I share it's better to be curious, it's because it keeps you in a conscious state instead of going unconscious and allowing all that stuff to fill your head with untruths or damaging self-worth comments or anything that causes you to feel bad about yourself. I'm trying to avoid that. And the less that happens, the less power you lose. Because if somebody wants power over you, the less power you lose, the more in control of yourself, of your life that you can be, so that you can make the decisions that are right for you. Because coming out of a monologue where you are just blasted and lambasted and quote, disciplined, like a parent disciplining a child, the more you get sucked into that and believe any of that and feel drained from any of that, the more you lose your power and the more power they gain. And the less power that you have, the less empowerment that you feel, the less likely that you're going to make a decision that works for you and brings you back up. It's very difficult to make good, healthy decisions from a disempowered place. That's why it's important to keep your power, as much of it as you can, and don't get sucked into someone's monologue that makes you feel bad, guilty, or responsible for all the problems in the relationship, because you're not. There are two people in a relationship, and both people need to communicate and listen to each other. And when you have only one talker and one listener, that's not relating. That's not a balanced relationship. I hope you're not dealing with this, but just in case you are, I wanted to give you something to work with. Thanks for listening today. I appreciate you. Share this with others who might benefit. Love and Abuse is the official podcast of the Mean Workbook, an assessment and healing guide for difficult relationships. The workbook contains a 200-point assessment to tell you exactly what's causing you to leave so many interactions feeling bad. Gain clarity on your relationship today. Visit loveandabuse.com for more information. If you've discovered that you are doing the hurtful behaviors to someone that you care about and you want to change that about yourself, sign up for the only program that walks you through the entire process of healing from being emotionally abusive. It has changed thousands of lives and relationships and can change yours too. Visit healedbeing.com to start with some free lessons right away. And if you're looking for a safer way to listen to this show where all the titles to the episodes are changed, click on the safe listening button on the podcast page over at loveandabuse.com. This show exists to remind you that you are not alone and you're not going crazy. You are worthy of respect, kindness, and love, and you deserve to be accepted exactly as you are. Stay strong. We'll talk again soon.